it's not smooth. Welcome to the Spent the Rent podcast. I am your host, Patty Rose. My guest today for, I think, the fourth time is Doyle Canning. Doyle, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here with you.
Yeah, Doyle is a former candidate for Congress and a voice for the progressive movement in Eugene and Springfield, Lane County, Oregon. It's an honor to become better friends with you. Sorry for everybody that's watching that we're a few minutes late, but these things, this isn't a busy time. So
it's a busy time. My ballot just arrived today. We're going to go over what's on it and make some recommendations.
Yeah, this is a real treat. This is the second time that you've came on to give your endorsements. You ran twice for the seat. It's an uphill battle. Last time you ran against Peter DeFazio in the primary, so you've got some guts. I think we will just say. And so, this time it's difficult because I am a very progressive thinker, just like yourself. I want universal health care. I want a lot of these things that are more popular than the powers that be would like to admit. And so it's frustrating sometimes where we have to kind of settle for a watered down version of those things, but here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Election day is almost upon us, and the choices are the choices on the ballot. So
that's it. And
let's discuss.
Yeah. And we've learned, I have learned big time that it's best. You cannot have protest votes are for the primaries. You have to vote for the better or, closer to the direction of the things that you want. And we'll talk about that more as we go along. We're going to go over what's happening in Eugene and Springfield, respectively. We're going to go over every ballot measure that's going to be on your ballot, which is going to be great. If you haven't received your ballot, you should in the next couple days. You can see that Doyle has hers right here. And don't, take the whole, we wanted to do this early. The election is November 8th. For two reasons we had to do it early. For one, on that night, I'm going to be flying to Washington, D.C., but also you don't want to wait till the very end to vote. I think that you're inundated with, I wish that I could say the second that you turn your ballot in that the commercials would stop, but that would.
The texts and phone calls will stop.
Right. So That would be a lie. So let's start off with your seat, the seat that you ran for, like I had mentioned before, that's currently held by Peter DeFazio for 38 years. He is retiring. And so the two candidates are Val Hoyle and Alex Skarlatos. Val Hoyle, the Democrat, Alex Skarlatos, the Republican. You have campaigned against both candidates because that's how primaries work. Tell us why you decided to endorse Val Hoyle.
So this election for Congress is a really clear choice, I think, for me. And that is to support Val and support our Democratic Party and support maintaining our Democratic majority in the Congress. I think you said there are two candidates on the ballot. That's somewhat incorrect. There is a third party candidate on the ballot who is running on the line of the Pacific Green Party. It's important to point that out because last week my husband Justin, he came into my office and was like, showed me his phone and was like, "Look, babe, I got a poll." And I was like, "Good, that's great. Show it. Let's see it." The poll was clearly paid for by the Republican campaign, by the Skarlatos campaign, or by the Republican National Committee, and it was pushing a very progressive platform: universal health care, Green New Deal, climate change is an emergency, and cannabis decriminalization, all the things that our campaign was really raising and running on back in the spring. And it targeted my husband. You couldn't find a stronger Canning supporter than Justin.
Sure.
And so, the Republicans know that they can't win fair and square on a MAGA platform.
Right.
They just don't have the numbers or the support here in Oregon for the kind of far right abortion bans and attacks on transgender communities and like all the things that Trump's Republican Party stands for, including political violence and the attack on our country on January 6th.
Right.
And so they are trying to sow discontent and basically hijack, the progressives in the district, who are a sizable segment, to vote green. And we're not having it. Our movement is not going to be used by Kevin McCarthy and the insurrectionist Republican MAGA movement to elect Alex Garlatos,
Right. I mean, it's
the
like
avowed choker, to Congress.
it's like the Russian meme scheme. I mean, essentially, it's like in the 11th hour, and Jim Comey, and we don't want to rehash that because we're moving on for the future, not talking about 2020, right? Yeah. So Val Hoyle, though, I mean, what is it specifically? I mean, you just said, but like, you're backing her fully, and you have faith. I know you have faith in her, that it's not just because Carlotos is bad. We'll get to that in a second. The things that I mean, Val Hoyle's pro-worker, pro-union. One of my good friends, Anthony Reed, he's in the commercial for her, and he means every word that he said. I know a lot of the commercials are nonsense, from different candidates on both sides. But that was a genuine one where he's like, dude, she's the labor commissioner. I've worked with her. She has seriously came talk to us. She understands the struggles and the plight of the worker. And so, I mean, that's a huge deal. And that he actually believes that. Alex Garlatos has been documented talking about, like you had mentioned, kind of briefly, choking and killing women during sex, and has shown overall disregard for the humanity of women. I'm a man and I appreciate humor, even dark humor, but I witnessed my own mother being raped, and I can tell you that there's absolutely no way that is acceptable to be a joke or to ever be taken lightly. And he claims he's different, but that was 2018 that those comments were made. That's not the only reason. I mean, I just think that we need people with experience, and also for people, I know Peter DeFazio is pretty dang popular, and he glowingly supported Val Hoyle in the primary, which I'm sure you were pretty stoked about. Like, I mean, it's tough. And I think that it's really important that you did run, and that what you did is valuable, But yeah, I mean, before we move on, I want to give you one last chance on this race. I think you've pretty much covered it, but
yeah, it's really important to show up and support Val Hoyle for Congress.
Absolutely.
And to vote Democrat in this important election.
What are some of the policies with Alex Garlatos beyond, character? What are some of the policies that you're the most concerned with?
Well, I think listeners and voters should know that Scarlatos is endorsed by Right to Life. They are spending money, sending voters mail on his behalf. He's distanced himself. He's tried to
temporarily
from the, more radical MAGA ban all abortion sort of position. But that has been his position. It was his position in 2020, and he is backed by the groups that are explicitly focused on that as their political goal. So it's really important to know that. He's also running ads on television with, himself and former President Obama.
I couldn't believe that.
And, he's door knocking Democrats. He's trying to paint himself as some kind of come together moderate.
Right.
And this just isn't the case.
Yeah.
That's not who he was when he ran his campaign 2 years ago. So again, he's sort of reinventing, every year, it seems like. And this isn't Dancing with the Stars. This is the United States Congress we're talking about. And your vote is your power to send a message to the party of Donald Trump and the MAGA movement to GTFO.
Right. And, that whole, just for further context, the thing about Obama, it's like he received praise from Obama. It was about the incident that happened on the train, that his whole backstory is that he stopped a supposed terrorist attack, which every one of us would agree is awesome. Like, that's amazing. And you should be commended for that, as he was by the president. But it has nothing to do with policy, strategy, anything that he's going to do in office. He was praised for one moment, and so it just is telling when he's running on that in this area, because he knows that Obama would be really popular. And, it's comical. It's comical to say the least.
Yeah. Again, they know that if they just tell the truth about what their political agenda is, they cannot win.
Right.
And so if your strategy is to confuse progressives and to mislead Democrats and to sort of distance yourself from your own base, like you can't, that's not a winning plan. I feel very confident that Val Hoyle will be our next Congresswoman.
I think
but
so
I want to
too.
make sure that you turn this.
Yeah,
in.
you got to do it. You got to do
You
it.
got to
So,
do the thing.
so that one,
It's not going to do itself.
that one is
on you.
Right. That one, we'll remind you again that you have to vote. No, that is your seat. So that's why I wanted to start with it. I do think Val has a very good chance and is probably the favorite in that. The governor's race is not as simple. We have 5 candidates, like you had mentioned before. There's other parties too, but the 3, we'll just say viable candidates are Tina Kotek, the Democrat, Betsy Johnson, the independent, and Christine Drazan, the Republican, who as of late in the polls is leading. And I think that will be really difficult to say. I don't really trust polls as much nowadays. But that being said, Betsy Johnson is going to be a spoiler. I don't think that she has enough of an umbrella to win the election, but I do think that she can take from both sides. So it's going to be interesting on election night what actually happens. I mean, I've received a lot of flack for simply saying that Betsy Johnson was going to be viable as a candidate. Polls are suggesting, like I mentioned, that Drazan's leading the race. There's issues though that I just think we need to address, like climate change. If you're worried about climate change, the only answer is Tina Kotek. If you're dealing with the homelessness, comes down to how you want it to be addressed. If you want it to be with compassion, then it's going to be Tina Kotek. If you want it to be more policing the homeless, then you can support Christine Drazan, because that's the candidate for you. That's her strategy. And
it'll come along with an abortion ban and defunding
right.
the Department of Education and the Oregon Health Authority. I mean, yeah, there's again, like a strong MAGA kind of platform that has been put forward by the Oregon Republicans. And if they were upfront about it, they wouldn't stand a chance. So we've got a 2-against-1 strategy with Betsy Johnson and Christine Drazan. If you watch the debates, they're both sort of coming after Tina. She's the front runner.
Yeah.
And so she's got 2 candidates trying to tear her down. And I think she's doing a hell of a job. She is running an amazing campaign. And President Biden came to see us in Oregon last weekend. That was huge. And, he sat down and phone banked with members of the SEIU for Tina. And it warmed my heart, because that is the work that it takes to not just win elections, but really win the trust and support of Oregonians. And she's putting in that work, and I'm really proud to support Tina Kotek for governor.
It was a little harder for me to come to. I was interested in learning more about Betsy. What people that I respect told me is that climate change is not something, because she's kind of in bed with timber companies, and they're only about profits. It's not. I'm not against timber by any means, but we have to revolutionize the way that we look at things. And with Betsy Johnson, that's probably not going to happen. And then also, for a long time, my number one issue has been universal healthcare. Healthcare for all is what it's being called. And I think that the only possible way we get in that direction is through Tina Kotek. The task force that was created, things like that will be eliminated day one by Christine Drazan. And that it's something that, as an independent contractor barber, I don't have health insurance. So that's something that's I'm super passionate about, because it's just so much easier. And yes, taxes may go up, but costs will go down. And I've talked about it until I was blue in the face about this. I red or whatever color I turned, but it's something that I'm super passionate about. And I think the only answer is Tina Kotek. She's the only one that offered plans about anything, especially homelessness, that I was impressed. I've only watched one of the 4 debates, and I encourage anybody watching, don't just listen to us. You have a little bit of time, not a ton, vote when you get your ballot, but go and watch the debates. They're on YouTube. Oregon governor's race. You can really see a lot from it. And it's just, I think it's pretty safe to say that Tina Kotek is the only choice.
So Tina's coming to see us here in Eugene, and I've got some really exciting,
some big news on the Spent the Rent podcast.
News breaking on the Spent the Rent podcast. And that exciting special news is that Tina's coming to see us in Eugene. Val's going to be there too. I'm going to be up there on the stage with them, and special guest, Senator
from Vermont,
Bernard Sanders.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, totally huge. So Thursday, October 27th, next Thursday, just a few days, they're putting together the details and the plans now. It's probably going to be on campus at the UO.
Nice. We don't know what the bird's going to be doing.
The bird, I don't know if we'll get a bird this time.
Yeah, I was there. I was there in Portland when Bernie came, and it was electrifying, but at the same time, I just knew that it was too good to be true that those policies would be implemented, and that's for a later date. But the fact that he's supporting her tells me two things. It tells me that he's supporting her, and that we take him for his word, that he's like, she's a great candidate, we need to support her. But also that the national politics is worried about this race,
Well, I think, yes, Bernie made a commitment to do like 5 or 7 state tour in these final days of the midterm election to energize progressives, young voters, working class voters. And that's who needs to come out and turn out to win this election for Democrats here in the 4th district for Congress, for Val, and also in the governor's race. And, we need to come together, and we need to get behind Val Hoyle and Tina Kotek, and we need to win these elections. And Bernie knows that. And, he's coming to visit us. It's a very special occasion. It's really an honor to have the senator come here to Eugene and get out the vote for Val Hoyle.
So also, I think I should say that if you follow Doyle Canning on Twitter, I'm sure that she'll be giving updates about where to find, where Bernie.
As soon as I know more,
exactly.
I will let you know.
That, that's the extent of the Bernie breaking news on Spent the Rent. I do want to say you were in there was a get together with Adam Schiff recently from California and a couple other pretty high profile people.
Yes, Senator Wyden was there.
Right. What was that like?
Congressman DeFazio as well. It was about bringing Lane County Democrats together to support Val Hoyle for Congress and really, fight back against the Republican attacks that are coming at Val and at our party and at our values. And their main line of attack is that, she's a tax and spend liberal. That's not original.
Sure.
It's not particularly creative. But, they're running their campaign, and they're running hard, and we've got to run harder.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm out here campaigning for Val.
I realized that I didn't add this. So I wanted to say, when you said Lane County Democrats, I just remembered the chili cook-off and all the fun little events. There's some really incredible people in Lane County that are doing some awesome things. I don't agree with everyone in the big umbrella, but I've been accepted and welcomed in. And that's something that I'm really stoked about, because I'm rough around the edges. And I think people are still kind of cautious about working with me, which is probably smart. But like in general, I've been really accepted, and I love that. And I want to give a shout out to Michelle Emmons, who's running for House District. I can't remember it's in Oak Ridge area. Mm-hmm. She was on the show. And so nice. Michelle Emmons has been hitting the campaign trail as hard as you can. And during a time when her home was at threat for fire, so shout out to her. And if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to my interview with Michelle Emmons, because she has a very Oregon approach. And I say Oregon because she's talking about rural voices matter as her slogan. And she's not just thinking about Portland. She's thinking about her district. And I think that that's so important. Sometimes people get these grandiose ideas, and she's focusing on what she's going to do for the people that matter to her. So I wanted to just, before I forgot, because we have so much to talk about. So shout out to Michelle Emmons. So we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about 2 areas. First, Eugene and Springfield, respectively, their specific bonds and measures. In Eugene, there are 2 bonds to help fund parks and roads individually. So they're separate bonds. These are both vital yes votes, in my opinion. And I felt like you can speak for Eugene and I'll speak for Springfield. So can you speak on these two bonds and why they're so important?
Well, the parks bond, you may have seen the lawn signs around. They say yes for parks, nature, water, something like that. And my county commissioner, Lori Trigger, actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, can you help with this? Can you support this?" And so we had a good discussion about why this bond measure is so needed right now. And basically, during the pandemic, so many of us, I mean, I know for my family, like, use the Lane County parks way more
Yeah,
than we did before. And we've kind of loved our parks to death, is what Lori said,
sure.
and we need investments in, clean restrooms, in ADA accessibility, parking spaces, and some basics. And in part because of the low taxes that those timber barons you were mentioning
Right.
pay.
Yeah.
We need to have this bond and support our parks. And so I'm excited about it. It's a big investment that will create jobs working in our parks, and I think that's a good thing.
And there's a lot of amazing events like the chili cook-off, like that's at Alton Baker Park. Alton Baker Park has always seems like every weekend during the summer has just amazing events put on by mostly Democrats that are trying to build community.
This is county parks.
So they're
we're talking
county
about
parks.
Mount Pisgah.
Oh,
We're
okay.
talking about Clearwater.
Sure.
Fern Ridge.
Nice.
Some of the bigger parks where I like to go for longer walks off leash with
Sure.
the dog.
Sure.
And where the kids like to play in the river, and these are really beloved places, and they deserve our support.
Right. And then roads. Last week I talked to Randy Groves, City Councilor Randy Groves, and he was adamant about how important this is. And it's not, I think the road bond is a continuation. It's like how, I think this is not a new thing. It's continuing. So every 5 years or so, you have to revote on it. And is that correct? I believe so.
That's my understanding.
Okay, yeah. And so we talked about that last week. You can go back and listen to that one too. So those on both the bonds in Eugene, it's yes votes on those. In Springfield, we have a jail levy. This is difficult for me. It's measure 20-237. This is a renewal of a 5-year bond, a levy, like I just mentioned, that will continue to cost taxpayers $1.40 per $1,000 of home value on their property taxes. This one's tough for me. I spoke with Mayor Sean Van Gordon, and he assured me that the money would not be used to pay for excessive force lawsuits, because that's an issue in Springfield, unfortunately. It is to maintain the 98 jail beds, cover costs of 40 positions in the police department, provide mental health services to inmates. Like, if it doesn't pass, they're just not going to provide that. That's questionable, but that's in the writing. And maintain response times for both emergency and non-emergency 911 calls. I am strongly undecided on this, and if it's a yes vote, it's going to be a difficult one for me to support, because, and you can listen to my interview with Sean Van Gordon about why, but I just, he asked me if I wanted to talk about it, and I straight up told him, I was like, look, I'm not defund the police, but I'm not necessarily fund the police either. And there's a lot of issues with the Springfield Police Department. Now, that being said, I am a fan so far of Chief Shearer. I think that we got a good one. I've got no reason to think otherwise so far. And I've been impressed with some of the language being used by Chief Shearer, some of the, bias charges. They've been charging people with bias, which is basically racism, and that's a step in a direction that we have not seen in Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm probably going to vote yes, because in Springfield and Eugene, we have different philosophies, period. I live, not just me, I'm saying we as a town, that I'm probably oftentimes the minority on my thought, on the way I view things. And I'm okay with that, because I'm not the only person that has to live here, and so it's a little bit more pro police, but that's not the only answer. They deal with homelessness a little bit different and all that. So I don't know. I'm probably going to vote yes on it, but it's not an easy decision for me. So everyone can make their own on that one. Moving forward, what we'll do is we'll alternate between an office seat and a ballot measure so that we can keep it all from getting jumbled together. In my opinion, the most important seat in this election is the Lane County Commissioner position 1. This is a seat that needed a runoff, as neither candidate hit the 50% threshold in the primary in May. It is Don Leslie versus Ryan Seneca. This has the potential to change the direction of the county in basically every way. If Seneca wins, the Republicans will have a majority, and that could be catastrophic for health and human services, among pretty much everything else. The strategy to tackle the homeless epidemic is literally night and day.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about Dawn Leslie and why she must win this seat.
So Dawn Leslie is an environmental engineer. She's a mom. Her son just went off to college, so we've been talking about that. My son is much younger. And she's a really strong, smart, committed candidate for this office. She's going to make a great county commissioner. And like you said, the contrast and the stakes in this election are pretty clear.
Yeah.
And because of what happened here in Springfield with incumbent Joe Berney, not meeting that 50% threshold, this race between Leslie and the successor to the Jay Bozovich, Seneca, is really high stakes and would swing the majority to Republicans on the Lane County Commission. We cannot let that happen.
No.
We cannot let that happen.
No, and it's been in conservative control before for a long time, right? And this is something I've learned. Now, that being said, this is a different brand of Republican. This is not my dad's Republican Party.
You bet.
And so, I mean, like what I was talking about Springfield, there's things about Springfield that's a little more conservative. People always say that. It's true. And the way I'm going to get ats for this. Thurston is, I wouldn't want that to represent all of Springfield. You know what I mean? Like the angriest. There's great people in Thurston. Do not get me wrong. And there's Democrats in Thurston too. But there's people that all they want to do is push you off the road with their big ass truck. I'm not saying I don't know a ton about Ryan Seneca. I do know a couple people that are in his corner that are, I've crossed paths with, that I had civil conversations. And what I learned from that is they're really getting more involved. And so it's not going away. But I think that supporting Dawn Leslie is going to send a message, that it's like, this is not going to happen here, where it's going to be strong-armed into this bully kind of tactic. And so I think it's really important. One of the regrets that I have about this election cycle is that I didn't get Dawn Leslie on the podcast. I've been so hyper-focused on Springfield in these last couple of years because I need to learn about this process more and more as it goes along. And I have learned a tremendous amount, as I hope you can tell, by listening to this, because I've learned a ton. I've worked hard on this, but I did not have her on, but I have met her briefly at the chili cook-off. but and she's warm. She's really cool, and so, and I know the people that I admire are supporting her wholeheartedly. So she has my support. I won't be voting because I live in Springfield for her, but
yeah. So this race is the Lane County seat for the county commission that sort of wraps around west of Eugene.
Right.
And so it's like River Road,
which encompasses where the recall was. And so there's this absolute conservative push, in that area. And so it's going to be a tough run for her.
Yeah. So it's River Road, it's Santa Clara, it's Junction City. It's out, we have a timber property out near Crow. It's like that area. And then all the way out to the coast, Florence being the biggest town, but like Deadwood and, in the Coast Range as well. And Dawn ran for this seat like 3 cycles ago and came within like 2 digits.
Yeah.
Like I think it was like 50 votes or something.
Yeah.
She's shown that she has what it takes to win this election.
Sure.
And, if she had just a little bit more money, a little bit more door knocking, a little bit more support, she would be our county commissioner now. So we can't let that happen in 2022. Like this time, we're not going to make that mistake. We're going to go all out for Dawn, and we're going to make sure that we win.
So that's a big one. That will literally change the whole direction of our county. And my partner works for the county, and so I get a little bit of insight on that. And she doesn't like me to talk about her politics and stuff, but I'll just tell you, she's like, it's going to change things dramatically. And like you had said, Joe Berney was ousted by 29 votes or something like that. by David Lovell, a man who was seen holding an AR, in front of his business downtown when there's no threat of violence whatsoever from the Black Lives Matter protest. None. I mean, and so don't let people lie to you about that. I watched the entire stream. I know people that were there. There was never violence except for from the police and from the Proud Boys or whatever, the counter protesters. It was appalling. And I talked to Sean Van Gordon about that last week, and still a lot of I love Sean a lot, but there's a lot of things they can't talk about because it's still under litigation and things like that. So we're going to move on. Ballot measure 111. I did an episode about this. It's a yes vote supports amending this the Constitution to require the state to provide affordable health care as a human right. To me, this is a no-brainer. It is not voting to push through universal health care, unfortunately. It is
Sadly.
Sadly. It is language to get us going in that direction. And so this is the step. And so this is basically telling the legislators that you support the idea. And I like that they're doing this. I like that they're doing the step so that they can be like, we want to see from our voters. It's pretty rare. People always say, they're like, why didn't they let us decide? Well, here's your chance, to say that we want universal healthcare for all. And so it's not government medicine. It's going to be how it's funded. You'll still have private doctors and all that stuff. And I've talked about it a bunch, but this is just an absolute no-brainer. So I won't take a lot of time on it. Yes, on ballot measure 111 to support an amendment to the Constitution to provide affordable healthcare as a human right.
Yeah. And I just want to say this one for me is really personal, really important. This is another step on the road towards Medicare for all.
100%.
And we have to keep moving down that road.
Yeah.
And, it was around 2011, 12 that Vermont passed the first and kind of only single payer Medicare for all style system in the US. And there was a group of us from that campaign in Vermont who came out here to Oregon and did a tour talking about what we did and how to do it. And, the path from there to here is very clear to me. This has been over a decade of work to get to this point where we have on the ballot an amendment to the Oregon Constitution to say healthcare is a human right. That is groundbreaking. It is really
huge.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so 111 is a yes vote. So the next race, we're going to talk about state Senate seat in District 7. And the reason I chose to put it here is because it's James Manning versus Raquel Ivey. I chose to put it here because James Manning is a champion for healthcare for all. He has worked tirelessly pushing us in that direction.
Absolutely.
And so I was at the event, the Black Cultural Celebration at the Alton Baker Park. And Tina Kotek and James Manning were walking around together, and they were literally spending a ton of time at that booth, which is where I set up that episode where I met Lou, who I had on just to represent. He's one of the representatives of the many people working on this. But I would imagine, I don't know a ton about James Manning. So my only question that I wrote for you is, do you have a James Manning story that you would like to tell?
Do I have a James
or
Manning
just
story?
Paint the picture of the character? I mean, he's an incredible human being. Now, I don't think that this is a question that he's going to win. I think that he has been doing so much work, and I hate to knock it, but like in Raquel Ivey, I found this really cool voter guide online, and her description was that she was running for office. So that's pretty quality. But anyway,
I don't think it's a serious challenge. I don't. But I think it's really important to always get out and support Senator Manning, and to uplift him as an incredible leader for Lane County and for Oregon, really, on Medicare for all and healthcare for all. And he's been a strong voice on accountability and policing as well,
which is huge.
We need that.
Yeah. So James Manning in State Senate for District 7. So the next one is ballot measure 112. And a yes vote removes slavery from the language of the Oregon Constitution. This seems like an absolute no-brainer. Oregon was a white-only state when it was founded. And so, which is disgusting and appalling. But that's old history. We're moving forward. And some of that, we have to remove the way that stuff was written, the language. I think it has a lot to do with prison the way that the 13th Amendment was written. And so I don't think that it changes anything as far as how prisons are ran or whatnot. It's just language, because there is rights of a prisoner that kind of borderline falling under the term slavery, and so I think that there's a lot of information for you if you want to look up ballot measure 112, but I don't think that there's really a question. It's a yes vote to remove slavery from the language of the Oregon Constitution, that's an accepted thing.
Yeah.
So
it's a comment on
I read a story
who we are and have been as a state.
Right.
And
it's an about time kind of thing. Like, yeah. I read a story one time, and that just this quick little side note. This is quite a few years ago, maybe 10, 12. And it was about a woman who was she was an immigrant business owner, which is great, but she didn't completely understand workers' rights. And so she had this was like in New York, and she had someone working for her, and they were kind of not the smartest person, right? So they broke a bunch of stuff, and she was like, look, you can pay me back out of your paycheck. And then it kept happening, and she's like, you're owing me like your whole paycheck. And so he's like, well, I can't pay my bills. And then she's like, well, I have a rental that you can have, and I'll just take it out of your paycheck. It got to a point where he was getting no payment. He was just getting room and board. That's slavery. Like that. She was literally charged with slavery. So these kind of things, like this bill, I don't know specifically if this would have but I'm just saying, like, if you don't make it a thing, like, you actually have to remove things like that so that kind of stuff can't happen. So I thought that was a really interesting story, and it wasn't. I don't want to be like she's horrible, you know what I'm saying? But that's why there's actually laws, and that's why there's workers' rights, because those kind of things happen where someone's like, I didn't realize I slipped into this, and the next thing you know, you were literally an indentured servant. So we can't have that. So yeah. Labor Secretary runoff. I believe this was Val Hoyle's seat. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
So Christina Stevenson is a civil rights attorney who defends workers who have been unjustly treated. In May, she received 40% of the vote. She's running against Cherry. I think it's Sherry Holt, who's a Republican who owns a restaurant business with her husband in Bend. She received 19% of the vote. That's really, I didn't find a ton about this. But it sounds like Christina Stevenson is the strong favorite to win, and probably who I would vote for in that seat.
She has the backing of Val Hoyle.
Sure.
She has the backing of the labor movement. And, she's really the one in this race who is going to stand up for workers and workers' rights. She's also a UO Law alum. So we like to see that. 3-0. So yeah, really, really happy to support Christina for labor commissioner, and encourage you to do that as well.
So ballot measure 113, a yes vote creates consequences for absent lawmakers. I didn't put a ton of notes, but if anybody's been following Oregon local state politics in Salem, there was a lot of little babies that wanted to walk away when it was time to actually do their jobs. Tina Kotek has been talking about
led
this,
by none other
than Christine
Drazen.
Tina Kotek has been talking about this a lot in her campaign, that, during the time when they were actually trying to tackle homelessness, that Christine Drazen literally just walked off the job. And
you bet.
Yeah, it's something that's been done by both sides on the national level. I remember public one would be like John Lewis was sitting in. And so it is done sometimes politically that I've respected, but this is not an example of that. I mean, the Republicans they just refused to be there to vote. So the beauty of this bill, of this measure 113, is that if you want your representatives to do their job, which I think across the board we do. So it's almost an agreement that we're not going to play politics anymore. We're going to do our job. So what it does is it makes it so that if they miss a certain amount of days, they are disqualified from running again. And I think that that's amazing, because to be absent on these monumental votes, I want accountability for a no vote as much as I want accountability for a yes vote. So if somebody's not going to show up to vote no, they're not showing you their hand. So, it's like, say there's what's an unpopular thing right now? Oh, women's right to choose, for example. If someone's like, well, we know that it's going to pass, so we're not going to vote, because then I won't have them campaign against that. I want accountability. I want their voting record to be public.
Absolutely.
So that is something that it's a yes vote. So far, they're all yes votes, all of the ballot measures. So that's pretty easy for you to know. So state Senate seat, District 4, pretty safe seat. It's Floyd Przansky. He's Democrat and chair of the Judiciary Committee. He's running against Libertarian Eric Pinnell. I think I'm saying that right. I'm sorry if I'm not. I do have to say, for full disclosure, I buy my vape juice at Eric Pinnell's store. He's a vape store owner, and there's a worker that works with him. His name is Joel Fish. Joel and Eric Pinnell is a libertarian. Joel and I have had amazing conversations, and I want to give a shout out to Joel because
is Joel a bud tender?
No, he works at the vape store, and we completely disagree. And he may watch this, and I hope he does, because I think he's an awesome dude, and he's a libertarian. And this is a Springfield story for you, in a sense, because he and I have had really good conversations. I've pushed back. He's pushed back. We disagree. We disagree on strategy. We actually disagree on how it actually works in a lot of ways. That being said, we can be friends, and I've supported his business, even though the things that he stands for, I don't agree with. He's a big gun guy. I'm not. That being said, I think he's great. All I expect from human beings is to be treated with civility and come at me in good faith. If we can have a good dialogue, I'm down to talk. If you're going to come at me with aggression and whatnot, then the conversation is over, So that vape shop, I think that they're awesome people. I really do. That being said, the experience here, Floyd Przansky has proven that he's a great leader. He's been in office. He's been beloved. I don't think that's a question that he's going to win. Republicans didn't run anyone, or I don't know. I mean, there's only 2 candidates that were listed on the voter guide, and that's the Libertarian and Floyd Przansky. So I think that's a pretty safe seat. The next one, it's actually another state Senate seat, is District 7. This is John Lively versus Alan Stout. I met Alan at the fairgrounds. He was respectful, and he even told me, and I don't know if it was off the record, and I don't honestly care because I'm not a journalist, but he said, I don't like all this Trump stuff. And I'm like, why are you standing here then? So you're obviously, he said, because there's Trump flags all over the place. Thomas Hura and I went and we sat at the Republican tent for like an hour talking to Alan Stout, and he was cool, but he wouldn't answer any questions, wouldn't talk about things that, it's like, what about healthcare? Like, I'm not negotiating on that. That's something that I feel like he's like, well, just wasn't willing to and wasn't going to get my support. John Lively is a staple in Springfield in this area. And I mean, he's done a ton. So I don't think that that's a question that's a pretty safe seat for John Lively. But Alan Stout, there's been a lot of money funneled into that campaign. And I don't think he's a terrible guy, but I disagree with him on just basically about everything with strategy. So I don't think that's a hard one for me to decide.
Vote Democrat.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong.
Yeah. It is neat though. And I encourage you, at the fair is a great place to be civil, but to go up to the opposition party and talk to them, and not to pester them, but to learn and see where you might have similarities and differences. I do think Alan Stout's a good human being. I have no reason to think otherwise. And I do like the fact that he was kind of like, I'm not going to take that as a reality when someone says, look, I don't really support him. Like, Donald Trump is the Republican Party. And if you don't want to admit that, then you're lying to yourself and you're lying to me, boldface. So that, to me, even though he was kind, he was not coming at me in good faith, because that is a fact that Donald Trump is the Republican Party. And that's all it is. That is the only platform, is to keep man baby happy. And that's it. That's the only policy. Keep man baby happy, and then we will get all the things we want, which is basically treating women like dirt.
Also cutting taxes for billionaires.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, there's no more. That's no more. There's no more. It's not complicated. That's literally it. Keep man baby happy, shit on women, and lower taxes. That's literally the
for billionaires.
That's it. Just for billionaires. Yeah.
Yes.
So ballot measure 114. This one is massive. I wish I would have put this earlier in the show, because I hope people are still hanging out, but they'll get to it. Ballot measure 114, a yes vote strengthens rules relating to firearms. Now, this is heavy. So it requires background checks, closes gun show loopholes, requires fingerprinting and safety training for gun purchases, and limits the sale and possession of high capacity magazines. I believe that it's 10. If there's any more than 10 bullets in a magazine, that will be outlawed. To own. Like, not just, so people will have to be getting rid of stuff. This is huge. I don't think it'll pass. I don't think it will. I personally am not a gun person. I've never fired a gun. that being said, Second Amendment is something that you can debate on that yourselves, because I have friends that I admire that have strong conviction on this. I do think, I live close to Thurston. I live almost in Thurston. I was in a sophomore at Springfield High School when the Thurston shooting happened. Nothing has happened since then. Nothing has changed. Nothing. This is the first chance. If you want to make a statement about that cannot happen again in our town, then you would vote yes on this ballot measure. And it's that simple to me, because if you want to raise, I didn't put this, it raises the age to 21.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what it does is it changes the culture a little bit. And everybody that talks about, I'm so pro Second Amendment, when you push back on that as a Democrat, you say, hey, you're talking to someone in good faith, and you say, are you okay with some sensible regulation? This is what it is. And so this is the chance to actually do that. A lot of times people say that, but they're not willing to actually support doing anything. And I think that, Kip Kinkle was given a gun at 13 years old. And so, we're not here to litigate that whole thing, that his parents made a mistake. But I think this changes the culture. When you make a definitive age, it's 21, that you can own certain guns. I think that changes things. I think that you would think that through a little bit more. And I struggle with depression, and I'm open about that. And my kids, and I hope they don't hate me for this, but they have voiced their concerns with depression. We don't want guns in their hands, because they're still trying to become men. And I'm trying to teach them to be composed with their fists, let alone a weapon, So it's just not fighting. I'm saying composed to not fight, is what I'm trying to say. So this one's big. I know your thoughts on it is that it's an absolute yes, and that it's a landmark opportunity for Oregon to make a statement nationwide that, we're tired of this gun violence at the mall, at our church, at the school. Where are you safe?
Yeah, I think for me, as a mom who has had a kindergartner come home and describe the lockdown drill, that changes a person. That wasn't the case when I was growing up. Like, this is something that our kids growing up now, it's just like a fact
It's a reality.
of life. And you're right. This ballot measure is sending a message. It's making a statement. I don't know that it will survive some litigation. But I've also been assured that the legislature can make amendments to it and can fix some of the problems with implementation. One of the main problems with implementation that I see, and that I share the concern with, is that it requires Oregon residents to go to a county sheriff to basically go through the
to register their weapons.
Yeah,
each individual weapon. I almost feel like it's an overreach. It's one of those things where they overcharge.
And the county sheriffs, number one, aren't really currently set up to do that.
Right.
Number two,
right.
Are probably not the right arbiter of who should and should not have a firearm.
Sure.
So I think, that needs to be fixed. That needs to be reworked.
Yeah.
And
it seems like an overreach. Sometimes people are overcharged. What was that dude in Wisconsin? With an AR, shooting people, protesters. What is Rittenhouse? They overcharged I feel like that was on purpose. Like, they overcharged so that he can walk with no charges. This is a whole different setup. I'm just saying that, to me, this is a big one. And I think when it comes to guns, since it's been a non-starter for so many years, to ask for all of that in one legislation is just way too much. It's not that I disagree with the policy. It's just that it's, like you just said, the implementation is almost impossible. We've seen the backfiring for the decriminalization of drugs, where they didn't have the treatment centers in place. And then they put this through, and now it's like, okay, well, we don't have anywhere to put you, so you're not going to jail. So you're back out on the street, and then you're getting less help. And so, again, this is Tina Kotek is the only person with a plan on that. That's a fact that's something that she was very thorough about in the debate that I watched. So, and I don't think it's lip service. I believe her, because it's not necessarily popular what she's saying with people, because they're late, because people are lazy. They want quick stuff. I'm lazy about certain things. I'll be the first to admit it. but so I don't know this one. I mean, I wish that this would pass because I think it's a step in the right direction. I just don't think it will. And like you said, it's going to be litigated, so implementation is going to be tough. But yeah, that's a big one. Measure 114. I will be voting yes on it, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to pass.
I'm a yes on it as well. It comes out of the faith community in Portland, where we have seen an alarming rise in gun violence during the pandemic.
Sure.
And people want action. And this is action.
As far as violence, I want this to be clear. I don't support violence by anyone, period. I don't support violence if it's in the name of healthcare. My number one issue. This is where I might differ from Republicans. I don't support
this in many areas.
Sure, but I don't support, the January 6th stuff. People want to act like it didn't happen. I'm going to DC and I'm planning on making a meme or a video where I'm going to be like, look, I'm at the Capitol, and when you're a Democrat, they let you walk through the front door. You don't have to break the window. But it's a joke. But the reality is it wasn't a joke. That was a terrible day. And some of the stuff that we saw in Portland, starting fires, throwing Molotov cocktails, I don't support that. I don't care what the cause is. I don't support it. And if anybody can say that, calling out their own side, if they can't call out their own side, you got to wonder why. Mm-hmm. You got to wonder why. So when it comes to guns, I want the rules to be the same for everyone. I want accountability to be the same for everyone, including police. Mm-hmm. And so this is where I'm a citizen, not a Democrat. I'm a human. That we, you know what I mean? Like, I just, it's so frustrating when, also if you stand proudly against violence of any kind by anyone, then you can't have a campaign ad against you later saying, well, they supported this, I mean, sometimes violence is the voice of the unheard. And by that, I don't mean killing people. That's never acceptable. The destruction of property is a different thing. The destruction of property, I'm not condoning it, but sometimes it's property. It's not people. But killing people with the intent of hanging somebody like an elected official, I would never accept that. So for Republicans to be okay with what happened on January 6th is just disgusting. It's disgusting. They were literally going to kill Mike Pence. I mean, it's insane.
I mean, they did kill a member of the Capitol Police.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. And and then they've used the person that was killed by the Capitol Police because they were going to bridge that room. They used them as a martyr. I mean, there was a sign downtown and I ripped it down that I was walking by it for like 3 days in a row. And it was like, I can't remember the person's name, but it was basically honoring them, the person that was shot by the police, because they were going to go into the room where the senators were. And they're like, one more step. Like, there's certain things like Secret Service will shoot you with no question, and that's their job, is to protect the elected officials from this. We need to lower the damn temperature, like, how has it gotten to this point where it's, and that's because you have a person that wants to make it to where your hair is on fire if this doesn't go this way. And I don't know how.
Well, this is why voting in this election is so important.
Huge.
Because here's the deal. Like, the 2022 election will sort of set us on a road back towards some stability and hopefully normalcy.
Yeah.
In our elections after the coup, attempted coup, and stop the steal and the big lie and all that, or not. It's going to set us on a direction towards more of that.
Right.
And so,
and there's going to be
the time when we either like recover and move forward as a country, or we don't.
I'll tell you right now, I'm going to DC on election night, and I'm doing that in the midterm. But I would not be doing that in a general in the presidential election. That would be no. That's going to be an interesting scene. And yeah, I mean, to me, my observation is that you're seeing the death of white supremacy, and that's why there's so much of a fight. Is so much of a fight from the people that they like things the way they are because they don't have the same rules as other people. So the rules apply to everyone but them. And that it's pretty clear that that's what we're seeing. And so, yeah, it'll be telling. There's a couple things that we're going to talk about before we get out of here. A couple campaigns that you've been working on a little bit. One of them is the Corvallis mayor. What is it? It's how do you say
Charles Mott.
Charles Mon. Mm-hmm. So you've been working a little bit on his campaign. Tell me about what's going on there.
So Charles got involved in politics really in 2016 as a Sanders supporter. And he attended the Democratic National Committee meeting, convention in 2016, where Bernie said, I need all of my supporters to run for office, run for dog catcher, run for anything. And he really took that to heart. And he ran for his local city council seat. And he went door by door in Corvallis and won.
Wow.
With like a totally grassroots
Sure.
campaign. And so he's been on the city council for 2 terms. He's also really active in the Democratic Party and with Our Revolution.
Nice.
And he's running for mayor. The mayor of Corvallis has retired. And so it's an open seat. There are 3 candidates, and Charles has the support of Sunrise Movement, the Oregon League of Conservation Voters, Our Revolution, Progressive Democrats.
Wow.
A lot of the coalition that supported me.
Sure.
And the strong kind of environmental and progressive voices. Charles is a strong champion for the unhoused and actually works in developing affordable housing in Corvallis. I think that's what we need in a mayor at this time. And he's really just a wonderful person.
I don't appreciate how your vocal cords are trying to silence you.
Yeah, well,
You've been working hard.
I've been working the phones about
Doyle
this
cannot
Bernie
be
thing.
silenced by her own vocal cords.
I'm out of tea.
Yeah. So we only have a couple more things. Jerry Rust is running a write-in campaign for the Oregon House in District 9. Is it possible for a write-in to win? Does that happen?
It has happened. It's not common.
Sure.
But it's not impossible.
I don't know how that works. I mean, I'm learning. I'm surprised I even knew anything to hold this conversation. When I started doing this podcast in 2018, when Alex Carlatos was still a piece of garbage, he's changed though, right? Like, no, that just shows you. I started the podcast in 2018. Okay, so that was 5 years ago.
That's when he
was saying that you could strangle women to death and joke about it. So that's in that amount of time. I'm still not qualified to be an elected official, even though I've had some encouraging words of people saying I should run for city council in Springfield. I'm getting closer, but I was vetoed by my own partner. She's like, no, you're not. But so I don't know, something I'll consider down the road. I got a lot to learn still, but I'm doing my best to do that. But yeah, I don't know a ton about how the whole House seats work and whatnot, but I do know that Jerry Rust was retired and he was like, I'm going to kick myself if I don't try. I wish he would have done it a little earlier because he's got a pretty recognizable name and he's done a lot of good work in our community. I was at the chili cook-off and he was there speaking and he was pretty cool, and so he's running a write-in campaign for Oregon House. And so if you live in that district, vote for Jerry Rust. He's running against Boomer Wright. So on the line under Boomer Wright, you can write in Jerry Rust. Yeah. So Doyle Canning, just thank you so much for everything you do. Thank you for, all the people that you've campaigned for. I know that you have ran 2 campaigns, grassroots, small campaigns that you've done really well. And I know that there's a ton of people that were heartbroken when you didn't win, but I mean, you got my vote twice, but thank you so much for doing this,
You are very welcome. Thank you for creating this podcast. Like I said, it's so important to have a working class perspective and a local voice in politics. It's rare. And I really appreciate it.
As soon as I'm starting to get more and more comments on YouTube and it triggers me and I'll just have to turn them off. I don't know how you do with Twitter. Tell you do with Twitter because I respond to them and I shouldn't.
Mute button.
Yeah.
Mute button.
I do encourage people to follow me on YouTube. Facebook is where you can watch the podcast the most. Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Twitch and all the different things. I'm going to be doing some stuff after the new year. I'm probably going to be going to more places. I'm probably going to be producing a podcast, another podcast, more details about that coming soon, but it's going to allow me to have a little bit more revenue. I also really need supporters. So if you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can become a patron through Patreon on my website, which is STRPOD.com. And there's a donate now tab. And then there's different options on how you can donate. Small donation helps. A monthly donation is huge, as low as $5 a month. Because if I can up what I use Streamlab and there's a monthly fee and I could get it to more places. Right now I can only go to 3 places. So I chose Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter or Twitch, depending on the episode. But thank you so much, Doyle. And yeah, we're going to get out of here. So for the audio listeners, I got a little treat. We're going to talk a little bit about Taylor Swift. So you had mentioned, you sent this to me, and it's so, oh shit.
Are we still on there?
I did it backwards.